Hey, das ist für dich. Egal wie du frühstückst. Ob mit deinem Lieblingsmüsli, einer fruchtigen Bowl oder cremig-schaumigen Kaffee. Mit Alpro wird jedes Frühstück einfach für einen gesunden Start in den Tag. Mit wertvollen Vitaminen und Mineralien. Ohne Zuckerzusatz. Und immer fantastisch lecker. Alpro.
Verwandle deine Leidenschaft mit Shopify in ein Business. Und knack Umsatzrekorde mit dem Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Du hast richtig gehört. Der Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Der legendäre Checkout von Shopify vereinfacht das Shoppen auf deiner Website bis hin zu Social Media und überall dazwischen. Ja, das ist Musik für deine Ohren. Wie du es auch drehst und wendest, mit Shopify kannst du zu einem echten Hit werden. Starte deinen Test noch heute für nur €1 pro Monat auf shopify.de/Rekorde.
Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He comes to us from Germany. I've had a lot of recent guests from Deutschland. I had Marcel Polte, Dr. Marcel Polte. But he's also a doctor. His name is Dr. Rainer Zeitelmann, 2 N's at the end. And he's just published a book in English in January 2025. And if you're watching this on Rockfin, Rumble, or Twitter X, you'll see the title and the cover. And it is The Origins of Poverty and Wealth, My World Tour and Insights from the Global Libertarian Movement. And Dr. Zeitelmann has 2 doctorates, so he's done a lot of academic work in history and sociology, and I think it's reflected in this book, which Steve Forbes of Forbes magazine, the Forbes family, said this book will rank in its impact with Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, so very high praise. Rainer Zeitelmann, author of this book, is a German historian, sociologist, and multiple best-selling author, whose books include In Defense of Capitalism and Hitler's National Socialism. He's published 27 books. They've been translated into 30 languages around the world. In recent years, he's written articles and been the subject of interviews in leading media, such as Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Newsweek, The Daily Telegraph, The Times, Le Monde, Corriere della Sera, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Neue Zürcher Zeitung, and numerous other media outlets in Latin America and Asia. And few of his books, I think the one that I found, the earliest publication in English, is titled The Nazi Elite. That was published by New York University Press in 1993. But I also saw one that was on sale. We were talking in the pre-show that was on sale for $2,600. It was formerly called Hitler, the Politics of Seduction. The new title in English is Hitler's National Socialism. I've done tons of shows on World War II, but that would be a good addition. He's also written The Wealth Elite 2018 in English, The Art of a Successful Life, The Wisdom of the Ages from Confucius to Steve Jobs 2020. Power of Capitalism 2024. He has 2 websites. The one you're seeing right now is origins-poverty-wealth.com, but he also has one under his full name. So I'll put links to both of that. And he's clearly a multifaceted character. He's done other things. We were talking the pre-show. He's done a documentary about East Germany, Life Behind the Wall, and also I think he's working on a documentary about Vietnam. So he's very busy. He's also trying to publish his first fiction novel. So if anybody's out there and interested in publishing him or reaching out to him, I'll put contact information. But today we're going to talk about this specific book and his world travels, which took place over the last couple of years. But he can talk more about that. So Dr. Rainer Zeitelmann, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. So for people who may not have heard your name, I know that you've come to the States. You've been saying you've been going to Freedom Fest here in the States and associating, meeting with other libertarians. Maybe you can talk about your background. You have a very accomplished background and what led up to publishing this book, The Origins of Poverty and Wealth.
Yes, thank you. That's correct. I will be at Freedom Fest this year in Palm Springs from June 11 to June 14. What is, by the way, my birthday as well as Donald Trump's birthday, June 14. We have the same day, and it's a Freedom Fest. And yes, what did I do? I studied history and political science first, and you mentioned my first doctoral dissertation. It's Hitler's National Socialism. It's about Adolf Hitler's economic worldview, about his ideas about the economy and social politics. This was my first doctoral dissertation. And yes, what I did a lot of several things. I was in a leading position of one of the most important German conservative newspapers, Die Welt. And then I founded my own company in 2000. I became an entrepreneur. It was a public relation company focused on the real estate industry, and we became a market leader, very successful company. And I founded it in 2000 and sold it 16 years later. And then I came back to writing my books, writing articles, and giving lectures all over the world. And this leads me to this new book. The reason for this, it was a world travel in 2022 and 2023 through 30 countries in Asia, like, for example, Vietnam or South Korea, Mongolia, and Nepal, in a lot of South American countries like Argentina and Chile, Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay. Of course, I was very often in the United States and in 16 European countries. So a lot of travel. And why did I do it? The first thing was I had a book, you mentioned it, In Defense of Capitalism. And this book was published in 30 languages. And I promised every publisher, if you publish the book, I'll come to promote it. So of course I'm one who keep promise already. So I had to go to this 30 countries. But then I thought, okay, only to promote the book, it's a little bit, it's not enough. You learn not so much by promoting books. You learn not so much if you're talking. You learn more than if you're listening to people. So this is the way I admire you. You learn a lot because you listen a lot, always to interesting people, what you're doing. This is what I did. So I split my travels in two parts. The one part was giving lectures, having TV interviews with newspapers to promote the book, and the other part, meeting people, economists, entrepreneurs, politicians, ordinary people, talk with them to understand what's happening there before, because about some of the countries I knew. Here you see, wait a second. Here you see Nepal, for example. Before I came to Nepal, I knew almost nothing about Nepal, only that Mount Everest there, but nothing else. Now I know a lot, and I had good friends here. On the other picture you see, it's Balcerowicz. He's a former finance minister from Poland, a great economist. And so I was in so many countries talking with these people. And I did something else, what was very, very expensive. I commissioned a poll about the image of the market economy and the image of capitalism. We did it in 35 countries. And another poll about the image of rich people. We did it in 13 countries. And all in all, I spent $700,000 for these polls, a lot of money. Not because I had no other idea what to do with the money. Even my girlfriend would have many other ideas what to do with the money. But for me, it was worth doing it because it's the biggest poll ever done about the image of capitalism. And I want to understand how people see capitalism in these countries. And there was a lot of surprise. I can talk when we come to some single countries where I've been. So I mixed it all together. And of course, I forgot one thing. I'm an historian. And of course, before I traveled to a country, I read some books about the history of the country, because I think you can't understand any country if you don't know the history. And there were some countries I knew almost nothing before about the history. So I read these books about the history. I had this polls done. Then I met people, and then I mixed it all together to have this book.
Right. So it's like a poll. It's like a survey too. Like here in the States, maybe the English word, sophisticated kind of questions and gathering information from all over the world. I mean, and what were the results of these? Like, you did extensive surveying, right? So what did you learn from that?
Yes, this was a survey. Let me explain a little bit about it. A survey about what do people think about capitalism. We asked not only one question. There were some other polls before where, for example, someone asked, do you like capitalism or not? This is not what we did. We asked the people 34 different questions. First 6 questions we didn't use the word capitalism, because for some people, even the word capitalism is something that that they just say that they like, and we wanted to find out how much has it to do with the word and how much what the word stands for. And so to find out what is the image of capitalism in these countries, we had, for example, an association test. What do you think when you hear the word capitalism? Do you think about freedom or prosperity, or do you think about corruption or climate change, or do you think about people escaping poverty, or do you think about poverty? So a lot of different questions to find out, and then we could compare, because we did it with one of the leading polling institutes in the world. It's Ipsos Mori. This is the reason why it was so expensive, but it was worth doing it, because now we can compare all these countries.
Hey, das ist für dich. Egal wie du frühstückst. Ob mit deinem Lieblingsmüsli, einer fruchtigen Bowl oder cremig-schaumigem Kaffee. Mit Alpro wird jedes Frühstück einfach für einen gesunden Start in den Tag. Mit wertvollen Vitaminen und Mineralien. Ohne Zuckerzusatz. Und immer fantastisch lecker. Alpro.
Verwandle deine Leidenschaft mit Shopify in ein Business. Und knack Umsatzrekorde mit dem Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Du hast richtig gehört. Der Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Der legendäre Checkout von Shopify vereinfacht das Shoppen auf deiner Website bis hin zu Social Media und überall dazwischen. Ja, das ist Musik für deine Ohren. Wie du es auch drehst und wendest, mit Shopify kannst du zu einem echten Hit werden. Starte deinen Test noch heute für nur €1 pro Monat auf shopify.de/Rekorde.
Whether people like capitalism or not, and not only the countries. In the countries, we can see the age groups, male and female income groups. So I have a lot of information. I give you one example. The best image of capitalism in all these countries is Poland. The Polish people love capitalism. And this leads me maybe to come from the poll to one of where I traveled here, Poland. Maybe not everyone knows so much about Poland, so let me tell you something. By the way, I produced a film about Poland that you can get free on the internet, on YouTube. The title is Poland from Socialism to Prosperity. Poland from Socialism to Prosperity. You can find it on YouTube. And let me tell a little bit about Poland, because this is very interesting. Poland was one of the poorest countries in Europe in the 80s, in socialist times. Poorer than Ukraine, much poorer than the Czech Republic, of course, much, much poorer than the socialist part of Germany, East Germany. A very, very poor country. And in the end of the 80s, they had very high debt. There were only few countries with such a high debt, and to add it, a very high inflation rate, some 100% every year inflation rate. A lot of people lived in poverty, and the interesting thing is, the socialists called their countries a paradise for workers, but the workers were those who stood up against the communists, and they were very, they shot them down. A lot of workers were killed, but in the end, the revolution was successful, and in the end of the 80s, the socialism collapsed, and then they started with democracy and with capitalism. And sometimes it depends on one man, and in this case, his name is Balcerowicz, and he started with something that they call it the shock therapy for capitalism. And you can learn a lot of interesting things what happened. The first thing is it worked out very good on a longer perspective, because now since 3 decades, Poland is Europe's growth champion. Very, very successful. One of the fastest growing economies in the world. If you go there to Poland, you're surprised how much changed in the last decades. But it all started with a shock therapy, pro-capitalism. And the other thing that you can learn is also important. Before things became better, things became worse for 2 years. There was a negative GDP growth. Some workers lost their jobs who worked in state-owned companies before, who got bankrupt. And so it was not from one day to the next that everything is good in the long perspective. But in the short run, some things became bad. But this is always, it was the same way when Maggie Thatcher in the UK did their reforms in the 80s. And I told this story when I was in Argentina, because in Argentina you have this Javier Milei. He's a kind
Javier Milei, yeah.
Javier Milei, yes. He's a kind of colleague from Balcerowicz, the Polish guy, because they are both economists. They both believe in the teaching of Ludwig van Mises and Hayek. So they have the same values, the same economic ideas, and also use the same shock therapy, both of them. The personality is quite different. You know, Milei is like acting crazy a little bit, like maybe crazier as Trump. And what?
Right, crazy like a fox. Like I think it works for him.
Yes, it works, and it's good. I think there's people in Latin America, they need something. Someone like Balcerowicz couldn't make any, in Argentina, not possible, because he's like a professor, like calm and, but no, Milei, the man with a chainsaw and the marketing guy and rock star, but they have the same, this is only the marketing, the public relation, the marketing, but the core of their idea is identical. And when I was in Argentina, I've been there in 2002, 2003, 2004. Every year I've been in Argentina. And I had a lot of lectures. I had interviews there with the TV, with media. And I told them, learn from Poland. Don't expect that everything will be good overnight. Things that went wrong for
Verwandle deine Leidenschaft mit Shopify in ein Business und knack Umsatzrekorde mit dem Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Du hast richtig gehört. Der Checkout mit der weltweit besten Conversion. Der legendäre Checkout von Shopify vereinfacht das Shoppen auf deiner Website bis hin zu Social Media und überall dazwischen. Na, das ist Musik für deine Ohren. Wie du es auch drehst und wendest, mit Shopify kannst du zu einem echten Hit werden. Starte deinen Test noch heute für nur €1 pro Monat auf shopify.de/Rekorde.
Work management platforms. Ugh. Endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Huh. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Decades and decades and decades can't be changed in a couple of months. This is unrealistic. And I had also always some doubts whether people in Argentina will be patient enough to go through this difficult time. Now it's positive. Milei has still more than 55% people are pro Milei, and things changed. In the beginning, in Argentina, things started as I expected. For example, the number of people living in poverty grew at the beginning. Yes, right. And all the leftists in the world, oh, it's bad. This guy makes now Argentina poor. They didn't speak about Argentina 100 years ago, before, when the Peronists made it poor. But now, there's this crazy libertarian anarcho-capitalist, and he makes them poor. A lot of people said this shit. Even our new chancellor in Germany, Friedrich Merz, who's more Christian Democrat, he said in TV, Milei brings poverty to Argentina. This is crazy. Now, poverty goes down in Argentina, but no one talks about it from them. Right. They don't want to know. They were only interested in the stuff when it went up. With inflation rate in Argentina, when Javier Milei came to power, inflation rate was 25%, but not in the year, but every month.
Right.
Every month.
It was almost like Germany after World War I. Yeah. Massive stacks of bills and underground banking.
Now it's only 2% per month. So this is a big success. And what I didn't know before I went to Argentina, I met there an economist. I write it in my book, and he showed me a book with statistics, with numbers about the inflation rate. And what I saw, this was shocking. Since 1945, they had every single year a double-digit inflation rate in Argentina. May I ask you, when are you born? I'm 1957, and you?
68.
68. So for both of us, it would mean all of our life, only double-digit inflation rate. The only exception was some year in the 90s. So, and you see, to understand the history of a country is very important, because what a lot of people don't know, Argentina, and I have all the facts here in my book, Argentina was 100 years ago one of the richest countries in the world, similar to the United States at this time, where they belonged to a group from the 3 or 4 richest countries in the world 100 years ago. And then it started with its crazy Peronists and, more government, less market. And they came down. And so this is a shocking news in a way, because some people think, for example, now in Germany, we have also, it's going down bad in the economy, and people think, it will become better. It's only for a couple of years, and then people will, change the politics and everything will become better. No, history is not as a Hollywood movie with a guaranteed happy ending. The story of Argentina is important because it shows it can last for almost 100 years that you can go down.
Right. It almost like Argentina was set in time. All this prosperity made these buildings from the early part of the 20th century, and then all the buildings stopped because the incentives, when you talk about incentives and disincentives, the incentives weren't there, and the inflation. Like, what's the point of saving if your money's going to be inflated out of value?
Absolutely. This is, and you can't borrow money, for example, to get a loan to buy a house or something. All this is not possible when you have this inflation rate. And it's crazy. They had, I think, 6 kind of dollars, like blue dollar and this and that. There was an official exchange rate, but almost no one used it. You changed your money. People at the you met on the street, and so it's crazy. But I hope now for Argentina, let's wait what's happening there. And yes, maybe I can add something about another country. We spoke before the interview about it. What is very fascinating story? It's Vietnam.
Yeah, please do. Vietnam's interesting. Also, you cover Switzerland and Zimbabwe. So these structures of living, you this tour you called, when you traveled the world, a Liberty road trip. So you're surveying and polling, like, who are the happy to, like, the whole point of a state structure or system, whether it's left or right or whatever you are, libertarian, is to create happiness with the people, right? Jeffersonian pursuit of happiness. Some of these places don't have that. They're just like totally state-run, non-free type of things. But there's other places where you've seen it work, where the system really does work, right?
Absolutely. And yes, maybe I can compare Nepal and Vietnam. First, a little bit about Nepal. This is the country between India and China, the country with Mount Everest, Nepal. And it's one of the poorest countries in the world. It's the second poorest country in Asia. and people are so very poor. And why is that? They had a long civil war with Maoist groups, and now the president of the country is a Maoist. And they have a lot of Marxist, Leninist, and Maoist parties. They have 120 parties, and 80 of them are communist, socialist, Maoist, Marxist, Leninist, a lot of parties. And almost everything is forbidden. For example, I learned you're not allowed to make a profit of more than 20%. It means you have to calculate how much did it cost for me, for example, to produce my book, and then you can add 20%. If you sell it higher, then you get problem with the government. Even they can shut down your company, or you have to bribe. Maybe it's what more common to bribe the tax inspectors. And a lot of other things are they have very high tariffs. I think Donald Trump would love them because I know he loves tariffs. So he should go to Nepal because they have such high tariffs. It's like for cars, it's something like 320% tariffs. For example, a BMW that you can buy in Germany for $80,000, you have to pay $400,000 in Nepal because they have more than 300%. So of course the result is that there are only very few people who can buy a BMW. So and a lot of things, they have a long red tape for whom it is forbidden to invest in what. For foreign investors, not allowed to invest in this and this and that, long lists, yes. And profit is bad, investment is bad, and capitalism is bad, and Mao is great. And the result is that people live very poor. I like the people here. It's great people there in Nepal, but poor people. So and now Vietnam, also an Asian country, I think for the United States, a special country because everyone has the association with the war, the Vietnam War. And what some people don't know, Vietnam, first, a lot of people don't know how big is the country. I ask sometimes people, what do you think how many people live in Vietnam? No, 30 million, 20 million?
40?
No, 100 million. It's one of the biggest countries in the world. 100 million. It's a big country. It's bigger than every European country. For example, Germany, we have 85 million, and Poland has 40 million, and it's bigger than every European country. So this is what a lot of people, and what they also don't know, Vietnam had not only the war with the United States, they had the war before with France, with China, with Japan, a lot of wars. And then in the 80s, what was not destroyed by the war was destroyed by this planned economy because the communists won the war, and they hoped, of course, this is what Ho Chi Minh promised to all. Everything will be great when we won war with America, but this didn't happen. They were on the opposite. They became poorer and poorer because they implemented their crazy socialist planned economy in Vietnam. But then something happened in the end of the 80s. They had also 600% inflation rate, and the poorest country in the world. I compared the statistics. Vietnam was poorer than every African country poorer than every country. The GDP per capita was $98 a year. $98 a year. They were very, very poor. Poverty means hunger and starvation there in Vietnam. So
early death, all kinds of really negative outcomes.
Everything. So, but the great
poor
thing
healthcare,
from Vietnam, then they started with free market reforms in the end of the 80s. Slowly, but first they introduced private property, gave the land back to the peasants. Before they had to work in these crazy collectives, they started to give them their land back. Also, they allowed private property that you can own factories, companies, and they opened the economy to the world. They have a lot of free trade agreements with many countries, with the United States and with the European Union and with a lot of countries. So free trade, and they started with free market reforms, and the result is, and this is amazing, in the 90s, 80%, not 18, 80% of Vietnamese people lived in poverty, 80%. Today it's 3%, from 80 to 3. And if you go there, you see everywhere entrepreneurship. They call themselves socialists. The party calls themselves communist, but don't believe this stuff. It's much easier to find a Marxist at a university in Europe or in the United States than in Vietnam. I gave lectures there at 4 different universities. I found no Marxists. They know that it didn't work. They know it.
They know it firsthand. That's the whole thing, is they've seen it just not create prosperity or happiness. It's really incredible. And the interesting thing also from your background, Rainer, is that you kind of came from that outlook, right? That economic outlook. Like at some point, I think you said in your book you were a Maoist, maybe, or something.
Yes, exactly. When I was young, I have to add, when I was 13 years old, it started. I founded a Maoist group at my school, and I had a newspaper. I was the editor, Red Banner, and we loved Mao Zedong. And yes, it was like started with 13 years, ended in the beginning of the 20s. So I know all this stuff. I read all these books from Marx and Engels and Lenin and Stalin and Mao. I know all this. Yes, and in Vietnam, I should add another thing. Economic reforms were important, but another lesson is very important. I thought that Vietnamese people, maybe that they don't like Americans or maybe even hate Americans. I would understand it, to be honest, because in the war, in the American war, how they call it, there were 10 times more bombs and explosives on Vietnam than in the Second World War on Germany, 10 times more. So, but they love Americans. They really love Americans. You see it with polls. I had a poll. They love Americans. And also, if you speak with people, I heard no one say anything negative about the United States. On the opposite, I spoke with a female entrepreneur. She told me, my parents told me, eat like American, hear music like American, dress like American, think like American, then you will be successful. This is what they're... So, and why do I admire this? Of course, they have the memory for the war. They have their museums, and it's not that they forget it or so. But they look in the future. And why is this important? Today we have this, I call it the victim mentality for a lot of people. I'm a victim of capitalism, racism, sexism, and all this stuff. You have this kids that...
We hear it all the time in the States these days. There's
yes,
always
you hear it all the time.
It's like a victim... raffle or whatever. Victimology is very big here.
Yeah. They love it to be a victim. The best is to be multiple victim, like being disabled and being gay and being black, and all this together makes you like the hero. If you're, then you can feel like the victim number one. So, and this is also with countries. Or, for example, in Africa, you find a lot of countries who have this victim mentality. Oh, we are the victims of colonialism. We have to blame the Western world, the French, the UK and whatever. And please give us development aid because we are so poor, but it's your fault. And now we have this climate change. It's also your fault. Please give us more money for our poverty. But the money goes in the pockets of corrupt politicians and elites, not to the poor people. And the thing is, for the individual, it's the same as for a country. If you blame others for your problems, then you can't be successful. It's, if you want to change your life, first take responsibility, not only for your success, also for your failure, for your setbacks. And this is the same with the country. And this is what they did in Vietnam. They could blame the Americans. We are victims from there was a war, the Americans, the French, and the Chinese and Japanese, please give us development aid now. So no, they understood it's our fault. We have this planned economy that does not work. We have to implement private property, having free market reforms, open our economy, and this makes them successful. And I met one time with an ambassador of Vietnam in Germany, and I told him this: I admire people who don't look so much in the past and who don't blame others for their problems. And he smiled. He said, yes, please think about this. We were in war with almost half of the members of the United States Security Council. If we want to be bad with everyone, it wouldn't work out for me. So we decided to look in the future and not blaming other people. And this is important. It's not only the economy. It's, this is maybe the difference between me and some economists. There are some great economists, but they always look only on the numbers. But I look always also as an historian and as a sociologist, the mentality of the people and the cultural values. For example, is there this blame game victim mentality or not? Or another thing, in Vietnam and in Poland, I spoke about Poland before, they love rich people, wealthy people. They are role models for them, not scapegoats. In Germany or in France, rich people are scapegoats. Every day in media, you hear how bad are the rich and eat the rich, and the rich are so bad and we have to tax them higher and higher and all this stuff, Not so in Vietnam and not so in Poland. They see rich people, entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, as role models. They admire them. I calculated something, I call it the social envy coefficient, to compare between different countries how envious is a country. Number one was France, most envious people in the world, followed by Germany. We are number two. And on the other hand, we have like Japan or Vietnam or Poland. They're not so envious. And in the United States, it was a huge difference. The older Americans, like my age, 60, they love capitalism. They are not envious. They have a positive attitude towards the rich. But the younger ones in our poll, below 30, you find a lot of people who really, hate capitalism and are negative towards the rich. So in the United States, it depends on the age group.
Yeah, no, it's really incredible. There's a huge age gap or cultural gap between the old and the young here. And I don't think the young have like a positive outlook, like they're pessimistic in the US. That wasn't that way, not the way I remember growing up. Can't buy a house, you'll be in debt, all this stuff. So something's got to change. Like hopefully Trump will change something. I don't know. But my dad could survive. I mean, have a family, house, car, no debt, no mortgage. Much different in the 50s and 60s than what it is today. But it's incredible that we haven't learned as humanity that some of these ideas don't function. They just don't work. And they stultify societies and they set people back. Like Zimbabwe was a disaster. Rhodesia was actually very beautiful. Like you can see old pictures of a so-called capitalist society, but a functioning civilization. And then it got overthrown by these kind of people and massive inflation. And it's a disaster. Zimbabwe is like people are starving again, Yes. Like it's incredible.
This is an important point that you mentioned. Socialism looks maybe sometimes good on paper as a theory, but not when the paper is in the history book. Yeah, and this is why because I'm a historian, I don't like to discuss so much about theory. So people love my books because sometimes libertarian books, they have a lot of theory, and maybe it's important theory, but not in my books. I'm more, I'm writing about history, what happened and what works and what does not work. So you find no theory in my books. But the crazy thing is, in the last 100 years, this is what you said, they tried socialism in so many different ways. In Russia, in another way as in Poland. In Yugoslavia, in another way as in Albania or in East Germany. In North Korea, another way as in Vietnam, for example, or in Venezuela the last time also.
Right.
Yes, and it never worked without any exception. And this also a quote from Albert Einstein comes to my mind. It was not referred to socialism, but I referred to socialism. He said, if you do always the same thing and expect a different outcome, it's another word for madness.
Madness, yeah. No, Venezuela is a perfect example. That used to be a go-to tourist spot for people here in the States, and it was it was known as like a beach community. Now it's a disaster. People are starving and they're eating all their chickens and stuff. Like there's no like flora or fauna because everybody's starving to death. Like it didn't work. They got sold a pipe dream. And that's kind of an interesting thing about this kind of thing is these policies are sold as like everybody's going to be prosperous together. And it doesn't. They're all poor and drab together. Like the cultural, like you would talk about the cultural values. Like Poland now, you can go and watch videos. It's beautiful. Like people are taking care of the streets, and it has cultural items, and people are walking safely at night. And then some of these other places are just like they turned San Francisco here in the United States into a disaster. It looks like something from Mad Max, the movie Mad Max. I'm really not exaggerating. Like that's the city I grew up in, so I've seen it. You can see this. There's no stasis. They're either growing and becoming more creative and more prosperous, or not. And San Francisco is just going straight like down.
Yes, I shot it. I've been in Memphis, and it was crazy. Police at every corner, but why? Of course, because there's everywhere criminality. No, yeah. It never worked. This more government, and this never worked. And I'm not against government, but I think the government should focus on two things: the defense, that means safety for the country, and internal safety for people. This is what the state, the government is for, but not to run the economy. This is so what I found out. Someone asked me yesterday if you want to sum up all what you learned about economy in one sentence. It's difficult. I read so many books and did so much research, but in the end, it's simple. If you believe the essence is that millions of consumers and entrepreneurs are smarter than politicians. This is the essence, because what is capitalism? Capitalism is democracy in the economy. Let the people decide. I buy this, I buy that, I produce this. But today, for example, in Europe, the government tells the companies what kind of cars they have to produce. Only electric. And we were very proud in Germany for our Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen. They destroyed because they stopped producing this car with combustion engines. Now it's all electric. Now we have a big crisis in all our. You can look at the stock prices, and they're
almost gone. They're laying off Volkswagen. Volkswagen, I think, is like moving all their production to the U.S. like crazy. That was the envy of the world, is the German automotive industry.
Yes, and they are so crazy because this is what I want to say. The politicians thought that they are smarter than millions. Let the consumer decide. I have nothing against electric vehicles. Who want to buy it? No problem. But if you want to buy a combustion engine, no problem. But the politicians think that they are smarter. And this is what I call planned economy. This is what I call socialism. Maybe they don't call it socialism. Maybe they don't call it a planned economy. They call it maybe different. But in fact, this is the difference between capitalism and socialism. If you believe that politicians are smarter than everyone else, you should be socialist. But it's crazy. I don't think that our politicians are so smart. Even to be honest, not in the United States, and of course not in Europe. We have much smarter people, entrepreneurs, and also average people. They with
We make fun of our leftist politicians here in the States. We all think they're stupid. Like AOC and Kamala Harris are like 2-digit IQs. Like she almost ran the country. Like it's incredible. We used to have like brilliant people and things like that in the government, or outstanding characters.
I'm a big admirer of Ronald Reagan. A lot of people don't know Ronald Reagan. He reduced taxes from 70% to 28%. This is what you can't imagine. It was 70%, and he reduced it to 28%. So I'm a big admirer of Ronald Reagan. What he did for the United States. So we had some great politicians. But so today
they should just cut taxes. They have to get rid of the property tax. We're taxed to death. The other thing is that they're stealing it all. There's billions missing here in the States, and so it's almost like the socialism is the con job for the kleptomania, the criminality. Like some of the stuff is just never got done. Like, so you're entrusting a guy with all your money, and they like Kamala Harris had a $32 billion budget to install telecommunications, and nothing ever happened. Like literally 32 billion, like not 32 million, not 32,000, but like the GDP of like Honduras is gone. Like, where is it? Like you're like, this is incredible stuff. So I think the historical element you talk about is so important, because if people knew the history of these other companies, which is included in your book, they wouldn't fall for some of these terrible ideas that make people impoverishes people. And
so I had another interview a few days ago, and someone asked me, do you think that you can convince people with your books, like The Power of Capitalism, In Defense of Capitalism, or I have another book, How Nations Escape Poverty, or this book, The Origins of Poverty and Wealth? And I said, no, I don't believe that I can convince anti-capitalists. And then he said, but why do you write this book if you don't believe that you can convince people? I said, because they will not read the book. They will not buy the book. I know it. If I post it on X or Facebook, they're always leftists. This is all shit or lie. And then I write, but have you read the book? No, I would never read a book like this. So they don't have to read it. And no, I write my book for people like you, for people maybe in our audience who are pro-free market, but to give them all the facts and the arguments that you can win every single discussion when you have a discussion. And also to teach it if you have children, to tell something about your children. Maybe you travel through the world, you travel to Europe or to another country. Maybe it's good before to read the chapter about the book to have a little bit about the history, that you understand the history of this. And I will add something, why history is so important. In China, in Mao's time, there was the biggest socialist experiment in history. It was in the end of the 50s. I have more about it in another book. It's called The Power of Capital. I have it in this book. And 45 million people died from 1958 to 1962. 45 million people in China as a result of the biggest socialist experiment in history. I have all the facts with footnotes and all in my book, The Power of Capitalism. And then I asked people on my journey to these 30 countries. I had lectures in every country, and I asked my audience, have you heard at school or university about this biggest socialist experiment in history where 45 million people died? And wherever I spoke, whether it was in Asia, in Europe, in the United States, in Latin America, only very few people raised their hand. They haven't heard about it. And this is, why it's a little bit my mission as an historian. I want to tell these people, teachers, they don't tell it to them. And at the university, they don't tell them. And, they have some theories about socialism, but when you ask them versus implement it, they say, I don't want it as it was in China. I don't want it as in Russia. But then I ask, but how is it? Where is it? Where is it? Show me.
Where's
show
the
me-
perfect example? They
where's
haven't
the
perfected example.
And then they say, here,
Don't have
it's
one.
in this book. It's in this
Yeah.
book. Like, okay. They say, it's as crazy if I would.
It's really
ask you-
crazy. It's the mentality. It's the psychology of
And
these
you know,
ideas.
It's comparing a book with a reality. It's like, for example, imagine you come home this night to your wife, and she said, "Oh, we have to talk. Maybe divorce." Why? I'm surprised. I thought our marriage is good. No, she started to read romantic love novels or perfect love, and she compared it with your marriage. And she said, it's not as it is in this romantic love novel that I read. It's so we have to divorce. You would say, here, are you crazy? Please compare our marriage with our friends. Then it's great, hopefully. But don't compare it with a book. And they compare it with a book. And this is a crazy idea.
A lot of these books were written to overthrow aristocracies or entrench things. So they're like the psychology underlying the book, the subtext is always resentment and you can't do it and they stole it from you. And I've never seen it. So then then they start killing people. We can talk about Russia. I mean, the Black Book of Communism has like a list of like 100 million or 150 million dead people all over the world. It's unbelievable.
And you know, so I think we should learn something. Maybe at the end I should mention this. We should learn something from the leftists and from socialists. And I tell you why. We have the facts now. Capitalism, in the last 200 years, before capitalism, 90% of the worldwide population lived in extreme poverty. 90% today, it's less than 9%. And you mentioned this more than 100 million people killed in this socialist experiment. So all the facts are on our side. Agree? All the facts are on our side.
Amen.
And I have in my books you find all its facts. But in the end, I had one experience. I've been in Greece. This was one of the countries, and before I came there was an accident with a train. 50 people died, and I saw protesters, communists with red banners. Oh, these are the victims of capitalism. 50 more victims of capitalism. I saw it because my hotel was next to the parliament, and I saw these protesters, and I watched them together with my girlfriend. And I heard them singing beautiful songs half of the time. I couldn't understand them because I don't know Greece, but it was, for the heart. It was beautiful. And then I said to my girlfriend, here, think about this. I say GDP per capita over the last 3 decades grow on average with 6.8%. And they have their beautiful songs. What do you think who's more successful in convincing people? They have the emotions.
Yeah.
Like they use all these Hollywood movies and novels and all. And then I thought about, okay, I wrote so many books now with facts, and facts are important. Don't get me wrong, it's important, but it's not all. We have to learn something, and then I analyzed the success of Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand with her books Atlas Shrugged and so on. And she sold 37 million. If you compare it with Milton Friedman's famous book, Capitalism and Freedom, he sold 1 million. Or Hayek with his Road to Serfdom, also a great book, he sold 2 million, but she sold 37 million because it were novels. And novels touch more people. And so then I said, okay, I tried to write my first novel because only facts can convince people. We have to try it in a different way. I don't want to be like socialists who do always the same thing in the same way. And then I ask myself, well, why it does not work? I have to just try something different. And so I wrote my first novel. It will be published in May in Germany. I'm still looking for a publisher in the United States. And it's an anti-egalitarian novel. I tell you only, like I asked you before, only like 2 or 3 sentences about it. It's in 2075 and it's in the United States. And there's a new movement. They call it the Movement for Optical Justice MOVE. And they say beauty is unjust. If there are beautiful women and it's not, they shouldn't be too beautiful because
It's not equal. It's not equal.
Yeah. They have better opportunities to get a partner, maybe to marry a rich guy, or maybe even in some. We should do something again. And first, it's only a small movement at the university, but then in 50 years in the United States, I have two parties there. The one party is called Rule of Law Party. The other party is Justice Party. And they gain the majority in the Justice Party, and the Justice Party comes to power. And then they start implementing their crazy ideas. First, they call all this beautiful woman privileged beauty. It's PB person, privileged beauty. And everyone
sounds familiar. They're doing it now. Yes. This commie language is in the U.S. now.
And then
like if you're white privilege, they call it white privilege.
Yes, and they call it privileged beauty. And the new thing is they have to take a scan from their face and their body every year, and they compare it with artificial intelligence to the, what is perfect beauty. And if they have 95%, then they are called privileged beauty. And then result is pay higher taxes and get a deduction of your wage against your privileges. And then, they become more and more radical, extreme. Of course, this is, I studied history, what happens always. They become more and more radical. And then they said, oh no, this is not enough. They are still their privilege. We have to make surgeries for all this privileged beauty in the age of 15 to make them a little bit more ugly, or more that they look more like average. So like plastic surgery, but not to improve there, but like to get them a bigger nose or something like that. And of course, it's a crazy thing what they start there to get, but then starts a movement against it, And I have a hero, or two heroes who go against it. And I don't want to tell more, but this is the story of my book. It's 2075 when beauty becomes a crime. And now, if someone listens who has good connection with a good publisher, please inform me, because it's published in Germany, but my publisher here, they publish only non-fiction book. And I look for someone who said, this is a great story. And my big purpose, I have one goal. I want to have it as a movie in the end. And, I would like to have it. I heard that even in Hollywood, they start now to buy non-woke stuff because they're so woke. Go woke, get broke. You say it with advertisement like Budweiser. Even Mark Zuckerberg says now he's a libertarian. I don't know whether he is.
Well, he had to change his stripes with the political. He changes with the political wins.
Yes, with the political. Yeah. And maybe there's an opportunity. Someone, you're in LA. Maybe there's someone from Hollywood listening to us and reach out to this guy. I want this stuff. This sounds great for our next movie. Please make contact to him. It's all finished. Even in 2 weeks, I have it in English language translated. Now I'm looking only for a publisher and for this Hollywood or Netflix guy who tell me I want to have it as a movie. This is my next big goal.
Rainer, do you have a working title in English for the book?
Yes, it's 2075 when beauty becomes a crime.
It's 2075 when beauty becomes a crime. That's the title. Gotcha. Okay. Well, so if people look out, you can research Rainer. You can see his website. I'll put links to his website. He has his social media contacts there, and he can be contacted through your websites too, right?
Yes. On the website you find the email. Yes. It was a pleasure. I hope maybe I meet you. I'll be in LA in June, and to go to
maybe I'll show up. I mean, I was a Republican. I think I'm more accurately a libertarian if somebody wanted to label my outlook and my views. So maybe I will go to Freedom Fest this year.
So then come to me. It would be a pleasure to meet. I'm always, before I come to New York, because I was nominated for the Hayek Book Prize.
Nice.
2025, but yesterday I heard it will be someone else. But even to be one of the last 6, it's also I think I'm the first German nominated. This was for another book. This was for the book How Nations Escape Poverty, and so I will go to. I love to go to. I have a lot of friends in the United States, but the problem is in the United States, I have a differentiated opinion about Donald Trump, and I met too many people. For some, he's like the devil. It's all bad. He's like the devil. He's a fascist. And if you say anything positive about him, for example, he did some good things. He lowered taxes. He had some deregulations. No, he's the devil. And for the others, it's their God, you know. And if you say anything negative about him, for example, I think Donald Trump did some stupid things with his tariffs. He said, tariffs is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. This sounds crazy. It's like someone would say taxes is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. You know? No, it's crazy. So he did some good things, some crazy things. And then I have problems with almost everyone because I meet the Trump fanatics, pro-Trump, and don't criticize him. He's my hero. Or I met this Trump haters, and I think positive things. Oh, you said some positive, sure. But you know, this is the way I think.
I know how you feel. It's hard to be in between them both. Like I consider myself in between, and it's
great.
Someone and if you don't agree with them, you are, you know, a Trump lickspittle. What do they call it? A Trumpster, or like you're a MAGA. They label you with like the worst labels, but it's really ridiculous in the United States. I don't know what it's like outside of this country, but there's very strange things happening. But yeah, Trump. You're either all in or all out, I guess is the way it is. But Rainer, it's been great to talk with you. Congrats on the book. People on the other book, it's 2025, or Beauty is a Crime, I guess was the English title. So if everybody wants to reach out to Rainer, you can do that. But the book we talked about today, which was just published 2025, is The Origins of Poverty and Wealth, My World Tour and Insights from the Global Libertarian Movement. But Rainer has got more skills. He's got documentaries you can watch about Poland, and I guess it was Vietnam, and also East Germany too. So like
Life Behind the Berlin Wall. That's great. I have now 530,000 people watched it on YouTube.
Oh wow!
Life Behind the Berlin Wall.
Wow,
they show it in some school classes in the United States. It's only 17 minutes. It's got, you know, Germany, it's a good example because the same language, the same culture, the same history, only a different economic system. You know, it was East Germany, socialist, West Germany, capitalist. So you can compare it. So
look at North Korea, South Korea. I mean, you can compare it now. It used to be. It used to be North Vietnam, South Vietnam too, right?
Yeah.
It used to be these things. So you can see these test cases. You can take a satellite picture of North Korea at night. There's no lights. And South Korea is this thriving, incredibly talented people with vibrant lifestyle. And
I've been there several times in Korea. I've also chapter in my book. It's great because in the 60s, they were as poor as all African countries today. And then they decided for capitalism. Now it's great, one of the leading export countries in the world. And in North Korea, they are still poor and living in poverty because of the planned economy.
With famines that are not, and it's all covered up, obviously, just like they cover up any of their problems. They never bring it to the light or historical fact or anything like that. Guys, please share this interview. It's so important for people to get these facts like Rainer's talking about. So get this book, get this interview out, spread it around. There is, like Rainer has emphasized, this cultural aspect to these economic ideas and how the left has promoted their own ideas. In some ways, it really is a culture comp, if you want to say that in Deutsch, the culture comp, but there is a culture war for these ideas out there. Like capitalism is bad. That's part of the survey Rainer did. So it's important to kind of counteract that. I believe in liberty. I believe in freedom. The left these days doesn't do that at all. They don't believe in free speech. We've already lived through that for 4 years in the United States, which is incredible considering the values this country was founded on. But anyway, Dr. Rainer Zeitelman, excellent to talk with you. Thanks so much for your time.
I'd love to thank you. Please send it to me. I will share it on my social media because I loved your question. It was a great interview. Please send the link when it is online, and then I can share it with my people.
It's going out today on podcast. So once we're done, I'm just going to shoot it out. But it'll stay up on Rumble and X and Rockfin. So please, anybody who's listening, please share this. I really appreciate it. Dr. Rainer Zeitelman, Zeitelmann. Thanks so much for your time.
Great. Thank
you.
Stay there.
All right.
Have a great day.
You as well. Stay there.
Hope to have